Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little. I'm again reviewing this $5 win from CzechRaizor. I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the tournament plays out. If you all like this type of content, definitely check out my poker training site over at pokercoaching.com. There we have a lot of interactive quizzes and monthly homework questions that I personally grade. So if you're into learning about poker, check it out at pokercoaching.com. Let's go ahead and keep moving forward.
Okay, sitting on king queen suited in hijack. I think this is very standard, very clear open. It is what I did and took down the blinds. Another hand is ace-10. It is a candidate for 3-bet folding, or for light 3-betting, but given the history with blue shark and some reshoves and the number of 3-bets that I did at the previous table, I think this would not be a good idea, given the history. Also, well, yeah, just primarily given the fact that I've been really active and these guys haven't seen any showdown, so they could be very suspicious of me being out of line. For this reason, I think this is a clear skip and I should skip this one up.
So you mentioned in, I believe, some of the previous parts of this about how you were very concerned with your image. And image is relevant. I mean, it's not like you should just be playing blatantly crazy. But at the same time, if you have good blockers and a good situation, you should not be opposed to just go for it. In this spot, I am fine with passing on it for the reasons you said, mainly the fact that people yet to act have reasonable shove spots, but I don't think you should be passing up on these spots purely because you've been 3-betting this specific player a lot. If this guy's opening too wide, you should be looking to get out of line and exploit them. However, this guy certainly does not seem to be overly crazy or anything like that, so I don't really mind the fold here. I think I would fold the vast majority of the time.
Pocket 6 this should be an open. Should be looking for spots to put pressure on my opponents once we are down to 2 tables and I'm sitting on a comfortable stack of 33, 5 big blinds and covering pretty much everybody at the table. So I should be looking for spots to play hands, and pocket 6s are a decent hand to open from this position, I think. Once we are forward to the flop and the flop is ace 10, 5, 2 overcards, and especially flop being an ace, I should give up into 3 ranges.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is just not a good enough flop for you. I think that check folding is fine.
Right, it is what I did and I like it.
It's just too likely someone has
right,
something.
So I mentioned a guy opening for a very large sizing when I misread the pocket kings facing 9 or 10 PB shove in part 4. So this is the villain that will be opening to this sizing as a default. Obviously I do not have any kind of info the type of range he will be doing that with. So it is interesting to see how opponents and myself are going to adjust with this non-standard over 4x opens. Oh, I'm clearly getting out of the way here, and let's see what happens down the road in the next spot.
Really should just be tight when people are opening too wide.
Some unplayable and trashy and weak hands. That would be too far, opening ace 3 over here. I would open in cut or maybe hijack, but this is not an open for me from EP. There's 1 shove stack, potentially 2 shove stacks, and yeah, it'll be too much. I view this as being too loose when open.
It's generally fine to be tight from early position.
That I didn't play. Alright, again, 4 or 5x open. So, yeah. But you'll be amazed how many times it gets through. So it gets me back to thinking that it might be, well, this is an extreme to go to 4.5, but if you like make it 3.5x, it would take for your opponents, it would take some time for your opponents to adjust correctly. I think there's a very, very good chance that you will get maximum fold equity on the first 2, 3, 4 occasions, and might get your opponents to hero fold a significant part of their ranges.
So that's definitely worth mentioning, the concept that if you start making it big all of a sudden, maybe people will fold way more often than they should. And I do generally agree that that does happen a reasonable amount of the time. However, I think you have to be very aware of what is going on at the table and also what your opponents are paying attention to. I imagine deep in most tournaments, most people are paying a reasonable amount of attention. It's not like people just they don't care, right? And it's not like the first level of a random $1 tournament or something like that. So people are clearly trying to win. So they probably are paying attention to some extent. But at the same time, it's hard to really know what exactly they think and how they are going to adjust, and if they even care what you're doing. So I like the idea, especially I like that you're thinking about various raise sizes, because I do think that you should be at least capable of varying your bet size here and there. But I think unless your opponents are just very tight, it's not going to be good for you to be opening too incredibly wide, just because whenever your steals do fail, it is incredibly costly. But, I mean, if people play too tight, you can certainly get away with it. The problem is that even if your opponents do play kind of tight, it's not like they're doing anything that bad, because you're risking so much in order to steal the pot. And quite often you will not steal it often enough whenever you are raising into multiple people. But yeah, I mean, if people are making big folds with stuff like ace jack and pocket sevens, then yeah, it'll be a pretty good play.
Might be interesting to experiment with large size opens, especially at low stakes. Alright, there's a 10 BB stack, just under 10 BBs, 9 BB, and I felt like I didn't feel good about calling it off. At the same time, playing these very, very loose, aggressive player, that I just didn't see that as a spot to be tangling with this guy. The hand's somewhat decent. I think 8-10 suited is an open, 9-10 suited is definitely an open, and yeah, interesting to discuss this one, whether it's an open or not.
I'd probably just raise. I mean, as long as your opponents are not fighting back too incredibly hard, and it doesn't seem like these players are fighting too hard, I think you can justify raising pretty much anything reasonable. Of course, if you recognize that your steals are failing very frequently, then maybe raising is not ideal. But as long as your opponents are folding a decent amount of the time, and you cut off their heads up stats, at least one of the guys, but it seems like the short stack is not crazy. The big blind, if he does want to be splashy and aggressive, who cares? He's out of position, right? So I think I probably would go ahead and open in that spot.
Right, yeah. Kind of trying to overcompensate for the fact that I skipped that 10 suited.
So this is what I kind of refer to my students as just a logic flaw, where you did not open a significantly better hand in a significantly better position just a hand before. And this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I would definitely suggest you cut this out of your strategy. And I think this just goes back to thinking in a way that, you're playing your ranges, and this is either in your range or it is not in your range. And if this is in your range here, obviously 10-7 suited should have been in your range last time, because you're raising through effectively the same people, plus one other guy.
Right, it's interesting why I went for this spot.
And notice it gets through, right?
Luckily, it gets through, and I think this is over the line a bit. Should have skipped this one.
I do agree as well. I would raise the 10-7 and fold to the 8-6 there. 8-6 is not very good.
Okay, decided to defend 9-6 suited, which is borderline / fine, in my opinion.
Yep.
And then just giving up on ace high flop with a c-bet. I think that's standard. If I had a pair on the back door, then I would be inclined to call within this spot. It's a clear fold to me. Alright, let's skip very quickly through hands that I didn't play. Because I think it's very, very important to manage open range correctly and opening spots correctly. Because all mistakes, all plays have very high potential, both being profitable and very costly mistakes. So, I opened Jackson suited and the gun over from EP, and I think this is a very decent hand, very good hand to open. So I did, and we are to the flop after big blind defense, which is king 3-6, flush draw. I think this is a mandatory c-bet. I whiffed completely, but I should not expect my opponent to hit too often, so I should go for a c-bet. Alright, about 40%, seems fine.
Yeah, I like continuation betting in this spot. I generally think it's a mandatory c-bet spot as well, mainly just because your opponent's going to miss the flop so often, and if they don't have top pair, or if they don't have top pair, they're going to be pretty unhappy. And if they do have, some marginal pair, they often are at least going to be in a bad spot, and you always have some equity. So I think this is a spot that is a very mandatory continuation bet. Don't be afraid.
At this point, I think he would be a bit suspicious, but I think at this stage or this point, it's a triple barrel or nothing. It's a triple barrel or give up. There's no point. There's not much to be gained by double barreling, because he could hero call me like with 6-7, 8-6, and he could advance like 6 and a gut shot, 5-6, 5-4, and some other pairs and gut shots and pairs and open and straight draw. So I would not be getting him off these hands. So it has a merit to continue and shoving river, but at the same time, I think once he's got king queen, he will be looking me up, and I didn't feel very comfortable with just blasting off tournament on this hand with no equity on the turn. So I just tried to c-bet, and I hope I will be done with the hand. And this is really...
I generally agree with that analysis. I probably would be somewhat inclined to go for it, but at the same time, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting out of the way. The reason I like going for it is because you mentioned king, queen, or better, right? Those are hands that are going to call pretty much every time. The thing is, it's kind of hard to have king, queen, or better. So I imagine you're actually going to get him to fold a pretty good amount of the time by the river if you do blast off, but giving up's always fine. There's nothing wrong with just betting the flop and then getting out of the way whenever your opponent sticks around. And of course, your opponent could very easily decide to hero call you all the way down, which is something that you may not necessarily account for. Like, he just may have ace-6 here and decide to call you down for fun. So I like the idea of not betting. But if you are going to bet, I do certainly agree that triple barreling is the way to go.
Weird. I had the vibe from this player. I had a feeling that even like floating and doing this without any equity, it wouldn't be out of question. But at the same time, it'll be a stab in the dark, which I have done previously, but I didn't feel like doing in this spot, hopefully. Alright, you never know. Yeah, I folded. Good. So, yeah, there's not much I could do in this end, I feel now.
I agree. When people take somewhat abnormal lines like that, I just get out of the way. I mean, they can bluff you some portion of the time, but it's not like the guy's actually bluffing you, right? Because if he is bluffing you, it's probably with some random gut shot and ace high or something like that. It's actually the best hand. So I would just fold there. It's okay. You have nothing. When you have absolutely nothing, no draw, no hand, it's okay to fold.
Need to be some more folding. So they're very standard open, and I get shoved on, so I have to fold. Skipping through some weekends. Pocket jacks, premium one. Yeah, shoving is the only option once I'm down to 6.5M and just 13 big blinds. I think it would be too suspicious. And even though these guys might be weak, it's not like I got kings plus. I would still be worried about overcards, and yeah, I just don't want to give big blinds odds to see the flop with hands like 2 overcards like king queen, and maybe or even 1 overcard. You could flop very decently, decent equity, and yeah.
I do not think it's out of the question to min raise in this spot. I keep saying actually, I probably would min raise in this spot, mainly because I want to be able to min raise in this scenario from time to time with a hand like ace 2 offsuit, for example. That's a hand that I would like to be able to raise and then fold to a shove. So if we're going to be min raising, if we want to have a min raise folding range, you typically want to ask yourself, which hands can I add into my range so that I'm not just min raise folding a lot? And that's usually just your nut hands. And this certainly counts as a nut hand. Of course, like you said, sometimes you're going to raise, big blind's going to defend, you're going to flop poorly and then lose the pot in some way. But I think it's fine to just go ahead and put in the min raise in this spot. I think you're a little bit too deep. I mean, shoving is obviously plus EV, but I think there are going to be better options, mainly because I still do want to be able to min raise and fold.
Go for exploitable open with kings plus, but not jacks. I do not like it. So shoving is good. I like shoving here. Ace 3 would be wild open. Ace queen. Hope I shoved. Yeah, again. Being called in position and losing the pot would be a disaster at this point. So shoving all the way to like 16, 17 blinds, I think is good with this type of hand and with this part of my range.
I kind of have the same view in this spot where I don't really mind min raise folding, and in this scenario with stuff like ace x suiteds primarily. So I think you do want to have some nut hands in your range, and you just have to figure out if this hand is nutty enough. And I do generally agree with what you're saying, that it's not like this is a super nuts by any mean, by any means, but I do think this one's probably a hand you want to go ahead and have in your min raising range. I guess the issue here is that maybe I am min raising more bluffs than you are. And if that's the case, then I have to have more value hands in my range. So that may be one of the reasons that I am perhaps min raising in this spot where you are open jamming. But I don't mind the shove. I don't think there's anything really wrong with it.
Okay, some weak hands. Okay, let's look at this King 10 hand, and then we'll do some more big pots, large pots that I played, and then rejoin some more pre-flop spots at final table. Pocket sevens.
I like the fold there with the King 10. Kind of a similar spot to earlier where that's just a hand you do not have to defend whenever the player's making it huge. It's perfectly fine to play somewhat tight and just get out of the way. Do not feel like you must play that spot every single time or that you must defend every single time just because your hand is normally good.
Alright, this is a clear shove. Nothing to discuss in this hand, and I managed to win another flip. Alright.
It's always good to win flips.
Queen. Yeah, this is a lot closer. I think it's very decent 3-bet spot. And I wonder how much I have to go for it, and given all the information that we have here so far. Whether it's like a premium spot, or whether it's close, whether it's okay, or whether it's good to skip it, given all the information that we have, stack sizes, and so on and so on. I do not think calling would be good.
I guess if you watch what a lot of the best players in the world do, they somewhat blindly 3-bet in this scenario with hands like King, Queen, and Ace, Jack with the intention of folding if they get jammed on. And the other option, as you say, is to just fold. So we're either 3-betting this or folding this. We're not flatting. So I think in this scenario, I'm really just kind of inclined to get after it. This is really the stage in the tournament where I think a lot of people will fold to significant aggression if they don't have anything. And you have two very good blockers. So I think I would probably go for it in this scenario and 3-bet to maybe 225k or so. But, folding's okay. Again, it's never bad to play kind of tight.
Another one, it blinds 25-50. It's just sitting on 21 big blinds. Pocket queens in a big blind.
Well, that's good.
It's a snap call, and I managed to hold to ace 10. Running good, keep running good, which is important when you want to do well in 3 or 4k player field, or in very large player fields in general. Right, and this time this guy opts for 3x, and in retrospect, but it is kind of hard to tell. It will be a bit of a cheating because I then realized that he was going for this large sizing with his entire range, and then I got information at the final table that he was really wide and loose and he was overdoing it. At this stage, I was kind of torn between shoving and calling, especially when he's gone for 4.5x's in the past, and now he's making just only 3x. So I think shoving would be good, but then I felt it would be terrible to run into like pocket 7s, pocket 8s, and I could definitely see this guy calling it off with pocket 7s, 8s, 9s, maybe even pocket 6s, and then I felt like my stack is too valuable at this point, being out at 2 tables and sitting on over 30 bigs, so I felt like there's too much value in this stack to lose it on flip. Even like facing 60-40 would not be the best scenario. It would be okay, but still not too happy to do that. I could at this point I could see him having ace king and strong hands as well. That will be a significant portion of his range. Okay, so I think I decided to flat.
I also much prefer flatting in this spot for the reasons you just described, that even if the guy is opening a lot, you don't want to make it to where he can risk this 3 big blinds, and then whenever he actually does pick up a strong hand, he just stacks you for a lot of chips. So I would call, see a flop, and go from there. I think this really has to do with the idea that I don't think that you are trying to play pots after the flop so much. And I think as you develop more post-flop skills, you'll become a little bit more comfortable seeing flops in this scenario. But well, you got to be willing to splash around a bit. And I think when you splash around a bit more, it's going to give you the opportunity to win more small pots and also just not go broke every time you run into a setup spot or whenever you just find yourself in a flip.
As far as I remember, yeah. And I gave up. I don't think that Gacha and cards are enough to continue out of position facing half-pot c-bet. And I didn't feel like clicking on this flop.
So knowing this guy is at least somewhat active, I think I would have check called. And the reason for that is because we have at least some equity. And also, quite often it's going to get checked down when you check call the flop, because just imagine how you want to play all of your jacks and all of your tens, right? You want to be check calling flop and then probably not getting out with those by the river. So if you don't want to get out with those by the river, you want to have some hands that you are okay folding by the river. And I think this is a pretty nice spot to call the flop, bet, and then fold on the turn if he continues betting. And quite often it is just going to get checked down, and I think you're going to win a reasonable amount of the time. So I like check calling in this spot and seeing what develops. Again, this just kind of goes back to being a little bit splashier and not folding to the first sign of reasonable aggression whenever you don't have a great hand.
Hopefully. Never say never. I can't be for certain until the hand's over. Yeah, I started to fold it. It is. I think folding is too weak. Once we have this info that he's done it quite a few times, and I think there are spots that I would gain quite a good bit of value, like flopping queen, and especially flopping ace. I think he would be very happy betting his weaker aces, and I could see favorable spots where I would be winning quite large pots. So I think flatting is still the best option, but let me know what you think about shoving, or I wonder what are other people's opinions on shoving, going on in pre-flop here.
Yeah, I completely agree that flatting is the best option, mainly because you really just do not want to set yourself up to lose a 30 big blind pot in a spot where you could be dominated. And also the problem is that whenever you jam, you let him fold out all of his worst ace-X. So I'm definitely a big fan of calling in that spot.